Please welcome Kim Severson, Gene Bauer, and William Harris.
Gentlemen, oh, I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this panel. These two guys are terrific. And who is printing the Foodie for Foodies, Foodies Against Foodies T-shirt? I'm like, also grossed out, but okay. So these two guys are terrific, and I've had the opportunity to visit both of their farms, and it's a real treat to have them up here to talk about animal welfare. Will Harris of White Oak Pastures in South Georgia, when you go to a Whole Foods in the Southeast, you buy his grass-fed beef. He's got about 15 head of cattle right now, I think, today on the operation. A bunch of varieties of poultry, 1,500, bunch of variety of poultry that he's, thank you, that he's like, shoot, I gotta go.
That's a big difference.
Slaughterhouse.
My banker's
Gonna be busy, yeah.
My banker's gonna do.
Yeah. And also has one of the very few, maybe the only commercial operation that has both a USDA certified beef slaughter plant and poultry slaughter plant in his place. Gene Bauer from Farm Sanctuary also has about 1,000 animals, none of which you're ever going to kill. They are farm animal rescues. You've got 3 sites around the country. Little known facts about him: he has a Cornell Ag economics master's. Also was in a McDonald's and KFC commercials when he was a young child actor. So. And the best way I could describe these guys is Will and I were having a little drink and a bite before the conference started, and I said, "Oh, we should order a salad." He said, "I usually don't eat anything that doesn't have a mother." And Gene will never eat anything that in fact does have a mother. So
Non-competitive.
That's right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about animal welfare. First of all, just so they get to know you, you both had kind of a Will came from a very long-time ranching family, conventional ag all the way, shipping the animals to the feedlot for slaughter. You both have had kind of a revelatory moments where you decided to do the work that you're doing now. Tell us a little bit about Hildy and about how you came to the moment where you decided to do farm animal rescue.
Yeah, well, I first learned about the cruelty of factory farming in high school when my grandmother told me about how veal calves are raised. And so I said, I don't want to eat veal anymore. And then as time went and as I started learning about the industrial animal farming system and the harms it was causing to animals, to the earth, to ourselves, I thought, if I can live well without eating other animals, why wouldn't I? So I went vegan in 1985. Co-founded Farm Sanctuary in 1986, and felt it was important to see firsthand what was happening. So I started actually going into farms to document conditions and would find living animals literally thrown in trash cans or thrown on piles of dead animals. And that's how the sanctuaries began. It wasn't really this long-term vision we had of an organization, but we just found animals left for dead, started rescuing them, and Hilda was our first animal. She was we were visiting Lancaster Stockyards in Pennsylvania and went around the back where there's the dead pile, and there were dead sheep and dead cows and dead pigs, and off this dead pile this lamb lifts her head, so she was alive. And we took her to the veterinarian thinking she would have to be euthanized, but as he started checking her out, she started perking up, and then she lived with us for more than 10 years. So she was our first rescued animal, and we've rescued thousands since, and we now care for 1,000 at our 3 different farms.
Great, thanks. And Will, what was you told me a story about? I think you were loading up some cattle, and tell me a little bit about how you came to your epiphany to change your operation.
There was never a time when I was at my most industrial that I didn't think I had good animal welfare. I didn't, but I thought I did. And I'm as appalled by the atrocities that occurs in industrial animal production as Gene is. But it doesn't have to be that way. I did raise cattle industrially, as my father did. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I made money doing it. I became increasingly disgusted with the excesses of that system. Particularly, I told you about shipping cattle, 48,000 pounds of cattle across country without food or water or rest, and that finally got me. But we don't have to do it that way. When I was at my most industrial, I believe that good animal welfare meant I didn't intentionally inflict pain and suffering, and I gave them food and water, and that's pretty good animal welfare. Today, I believe that it's incumbent upon me to create an environment for the animal in which they can express instinctive behavior. And that takes it to a whole new level. And so that's...
And so, and tell us a little bit about what that means now on your, for your operation. And you've really gotten a whole systematic approach, right? So talk a little bit more about how you manage your land with your animals, and give some idea what your definition of good animal welfare is.
So, chickens were born to scratch and peck, and hogs were born to root and wallow, and cattle were born to roam and graze, and those are instinctive behaviors. And if you don't give them that opportunity, it's not good animal welfare. If you have a child, and you say, well, I'm going to be a good parent, I'm going to put him or her in a closet where it's 72 degrees, and we'll leave the light on, and there's a mattress in there, and they'll never break their leg on the football field, and they'll never be abducted, and they'll never have a skint shin. It's not good parenting.
Right.
Let me just make a note of that.
And it's almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
You've got to let that kid express instinctive behavior. You've got to let the animal express it. So, there was never a time I didn't think I was doing great. I'm fine, just fine. But it wasn't. It was a paradigm that had been created, since World War II.
Now, both of you have come into a time when we're thinking about eating less meat from a number of perspectives: environmental, health, also just sort of the excesses that we've seen in antibiotic resistance and the way that animals are raised. Are we headed toward, in your ideal world, we would not eat meat at all, right?
Well,
and tell me a little bit about where are we, are you all really feel like culture is changing in such a way? You guys are leading it? Are you following it? Talk a little bit about where we are in meat consumption, your perspective of it.
I think there's more awareness now than ever about the excesses and the cruelty of industrial animal farming. And there are lots of people that say, I don't want to be part of that. And so that's a very positive thing happening. I think the fact that we can share information very quickly now, through the internet is huge. I think the entrepreneurs who are here creating alternatives to animal foods are playing a massive role. But I think that things are changing, and everybody has to make their own choice. Now, I went vegan in 1985. To me, that makes the most sense. I would love for everybody to be vegan, but everybody has to do what they think is right, And in terms of living without eating any other animals ever, who knows if that's possible? To me, being vegan is an aspiration to live as kindly as possible. And it's about creating relationships that are respectful. Instead of looking at animals just as commodities that are treated very badly, looking at them as, at Farm Sanctuary, our friends, not our food. And we have turkeys that follow you around like puppy dogs. And you'll sit down in the pasture and they'll come and sit on your lap. So these are animals that have feelings. They are individuals. They're not that different than cats and dogs in terms of their personalities. And in some countries, they eat cats and dogs, and we're appalled by that. But in our country, we think they are our friends and the other ones are our food. But all of these animals do have feelings. And so from my perspective, they deserve to be treated with respect. And for me, that means not killing them.
Now, let me just take one sidetrack. We'll talk to you about people eating less meat in a minute. But one thing I've noticed, the animals that you're rescuing are animals that were bred to have very short lifespans. And so I saw on your farm some hogs that were just giant, couldn't really walk. They'd kind of grown, they'd lived longer than their genetics were designed to allow them to live. Turkeys that couldn't walk because their breasts were overdeveloped. This is the overdeveloped breast symbol, if you're ever moderating a panel, or that. In Georgia, it is that. So I just realized that was. But anyway, but how do you? I've often wondered, I'm just curious, like, is it worse to keep them alive for a long time when they weren't designed to live that long? I mean, it was a little hard to see that on your
These are things
farm.
we struggle with every day. And, you know, turkeys have been so profoundly altered genetically that they can't even reproduce naturally anymore. All commercial turkeys are now products of artificial insemination. Pigs have been genetically bred to grow very fast and very large. So have chickens. They grow twice as fast, twice as large as normal. Their hearts and lungs have a hard time supporting their growth rate. In some cases, in industrial production, they die of heart attacks at a few weeks old. So we're getting these animals.
Keep them? I mean, what do you?
We have an amazing shelter staff that is learning, working with Cornell Veterinary School, and sometimes we've actually done tummy tuck type surgery on chickens, believe it or not. We've done crop reduction surgery.
And Nestle has a product for them, the bariatric.
With our pigs, you know, they have been genetically bred to grow very big, and with that comes a very strong appetite urge. So we give them high fiber food. We make sure they get out and exercise, you know. So it's, you know, it's kinds of lessons that we can learn from actually as a human species if we're too sedentary and don't eat whole foods and fiber and things like this. In fact, if you look at the nutrients and you had to label one nutrient which is the most important for us in this country to start eating more of, it would be fiber. You know, and that's all in plant foods. Meat has no fiber, you know, but anyway, so.
All right, thank you. So talk to me a little bit about, people are eating less meat. How has that impacted your business, or what's your approach to meat consumption in this country and how it affects your bottom line?
So we were told yesterday repeatedly that we eat too much meat, repeatedly. And I would submit to you that there are some of us, I'd be the first one, that eats too much meat. I think there are a lot of people that don't eat enough meat. But that's what I think. Yeah. And I think that how much meat me or you eat is a fiercely personal choice. Mm-hmm. I get to say, you get to say. Mm-hmm. So saying that we eat too much meat is, I think that's not okay. I think we all get to decide that. What's really not okay for me is some of the reasons that we eat too much meat. The environment, I reject. This system that we live in was created from millions of years of ruminant creatures, millions and millions of them roaming the face of this earth, grazing grass and forbs, in a predator-prey relationship, which is a far cry from the industrial confinement system. So we're going to reject the way we got here, the girl that brought us to the party, because we bastardized it with this industrial system that was never meant to be. So, you know, I reject that.
All right.
Health, you know, yeah, you know, I'll probably live to be 80 instead of 90 because I eat a lot of meat. I got that. I'll take it. I'm going to live to be 80, not 90, because I didn't get up and run 3 miles this morning. I got that. That's that personal decision that I make. We can go on a long time. About the environmental section, I'd love to talk to you about for a long time. We don't have a long time. I would ask everyone in this room, please, Google Savory Institute. I think it's savory.org. And you'll get a lot of answers to those questions.
All right.
That's all I got to say about that.
All right. Yes, sir.
I think it's a fundamental question of whether or not we should eat animals. You know, it really is, and everybody has to make their own choice, but it speaks to our relationship. You know, predator-prey is, you know, cows are predators to the grass, which is the prey, is how it's often looked at. And human beings, are we natural predators? Or what is our role on the planet? You know, a lion has to eat meat. But human beings, we have a choice. And if you look at us biologically, we have a very long intestinal tract, whereas natural carnivores have a very short intestinal tract, because meat has to get through quickly because it's a putrefying piece of flesh with no fiber. You know, so I think, but we can, and we have, over the course of our history, survived as omnivores, eating all kinds of things. We've eaten animals in many cases because we've had to survive. We've eaten people sometimes because we've had to survive. But it's
You've
not.
been to the New York Times. Oh, I'm sorry.
But anyway,
Okay.
so, but it is personal and it's emotional.
Right.
And there's
We have about 5 minutes, and I'd love to get you all in on the discussion about animal welfare and about where we stand on meat eating. I know both of you welcome people to your farms to come visit, so you may want to ask them about that. I think you both actually have little cabins you can stay at both. I've stayed at both, and they're great. Anybody have a question? Anybody want to direct something? Yes, please.
I just want to say that one of the most frustrating things about this meat dialogue that we're having in this country is that most of the time there's no differentiation between what kind of meat you're eating, what the quality of the meat is. Not meat is not meat is not meat. So if you're eating a confinement type of an animal, it's a very different consumption than if you're eating an animal that's raised as you are raising your animals in Georgia.
Yeah, and we're seeing increasingly, I think you look at Whole Foods and they're trying to do their 1 to 5 system, and certainly at the Publix, which is, you can get grass-fed beef selection. It's labeled and kind of marketed that way. I think it's changing a little bit. You're absolutely right that, if you could imagine McDonald's having its grass-fed burger, and it's an interesting point. Is there another question, or Jim, did you have one? Or we'll go Jim and then up here. Thank you.
So, Will, I was wondering if you could just talk about the benefits of grass-fed beef production, as specifically from a health angle, because I think that's real key.
I will not address the health benefits of my product because I am disingenuous in doing that. I'm a farmer, not a nutritionalist or a doctor, and
Here's a mic.
I don't talk about health benefits or nutritional density or fiber or these because it's disingenuous. I am an expert in animal welfare, environmental sustainability and regeneration, and the impoverishment of rural America. I got you on that. It infuriates me when I hear farmers puke up what they've heard about antibiotic resistance. God, we don't know that. Thank God there are people like the previous speaker that speak for us. But anecdotally, I believe it's healthier. I believe it's safer. But, I'm a farmer.
Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of awareness about factory farming, so people are looking for alternatives. That's a very good thing. The problem, though, is a lot of products being sold as humane or free range and so on tend to sound a lot better than they are. And the only way really to know how animals are raised is to actually visit the farms and see. And the vast majority of animals still being raised in this country are raised in basically factory farms, including many that are sold as free range. I hate to say, but it's true. The labels are not very solid. So that's a big problem. There's not a lot of infrastructure in place to make sure that there are some real standards in place. And so that's the place we are in now, unfortunately.
We had a question in the front here, I think. Yes, sir. Fred, how are you?
Since we're making a moral issue out of this, I would like to suggest that we need to take another step with it. And, it's always been of interest to me that we have these moral concerns about eating animals, but we don't have them about eating plants. And I think that our Native American cousins had a much better perspective on this when they reminded us that whenever we harvest anything, whether it's a plant or an animal to feed ourselves, we're taking life to keep ourselves alive. And then they always apologized for whatever food they were taking because they were taking life. And then they also made the commitment that someday it will be their turn for their bodies to return to the soil. So they were part of the food chain, not on top of the food chain. And I think I think we go in the wrong moral direction when we make all these cases for eating animals because they're more like us, but we don't pay any attention to their moral responsibility for eating plants. And I think that's a much better approach for us to take.
Well,
Arguing you should become a breatharian.
Well, yeah, I've never met a living one. I've heard of breatharians. But if you really care about plants and you don't want to cause their death, eating plants directly causes far fewer to be killed than eating animals, where you kill lots of plants. And the experience of going to a slaughterhouse and the experience of killing an animal is a little bit different than the experience of going and picking an apple from a tree, or a berry from a plant.
Not to the apple, it's not.
Maybe not to the apple. So maybe wait for the apple to fall.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. You're right. So I think, but these are fundamental questions, and they are. It's really about our place on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Killing.
Will, I'd love for you to weigh in on this.
Everything that's born is going to die. And the animals I have on my farm are going to die. And the animals you have on your farm is going to die. And I would submit that the animals that I slaughter on my farm, while there's a lot more of them, die more humanely than the ones that die on your farm. On my farm. So when I first started talking to consumers, I didn't even know a consumer. One of the things that people would say to me is, how can you have a baby calf born on your farm and raise it for 22 months and then kill it and eat it? How can you do that? And I couldn't say anything, because my true thoughted answer was, it doesn't bother me. It's the way it's supposed to be. But that sounds flippant, and I'm not a flippant person. So I had to give it a lot of thought, and I finally figured it out. And what's true is, my farm, White Oak Pastures, is not a factory. It's an organism. It's a living organism. And everything on it feeds everything else on it. And we have many different, I'll call it classes, not ranked, but different classes of life, animal life. We'll leave the plants out of it, on the farm. They're companion animals. And I love my dog the same way a lady in a high-rise apartment in New York loves her dog. It's the same. Then I have wildlife on my farm. And I love that wildlife in a certain way, but it's a different way. And I have food animals on my farm, and I love them in a certain way. The same way you would love your husband, father, and son in different ways. I love my wildlife, my food animals, my employees, the microbes in the soil. I love them all in different ways. And we all feed each other. Okay.
No, thank you. We have no time, but I want to give you one last rebuttal moment. I feel like
I would just say we are all part of an organism, and what is our place on the planet? This gets to some fundamental questions. And, what I said earlier, I'll just say again, is if we can live well without causing unnecessary killing and violence and harm, why wouldn't we?
Now I want us all to hug each other. Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.